most importantly, I would argue, it's is around your technical resolving groups. Hello and welcome to the second episode of the MIM Lockdown Show. Thank you for all of you who watched the first show. Those of you who didn't, my name's Adam Norman. I'm the CEO and founder here at MIM, the only professional body dedicated to IT major incident management training and certification. As I explained in the first episode, we're in a really privileged position. So we serve companies in about 76 different countries now. So we have seen literally thousands of IT major incident management operations, and we've also seen the most common challenges where people get stuck and what takes good or average major incident functions through to really high performing teams. And what I wanted to talk about in this show is an extension of emotion intelligence. So any of you who are quite experienced in major incident management, or indeed any of you who have engaged with any content that we put out, will know that something both I and our trainers talk about quite a lot is major incident management and great major incident management is dependent on the number and quality of relationships you have as a major incident manager. So as a leader during major incidents, you really are dependent on everybody coming together collectively and collaboratively to find the quickest and best solution. So emotion intelligence obviously plays a huge part in that, really, really important. What I want to talk about today is a concept called the emotional bank account. So some of you may be familiar with this. It was Dr. John Gottman who spent about 40 years researching relationships, both of couples and in other scenarios. But Steven Covey is probably how most of you will have heard about the emotional bank account. He made this popular in his book 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, and the commercial world really ran with that and grabbed it. So, and I highly recommend that book, by the way, Steven Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, an absolute goldmine of great information for leaders and people working in kind of any commercial aspect, but really important and useful book for major incident managers. And so when we talk about this concept of you having to have numerous really high quality relationships, it's important at every aspect, okay? So it's important about your customers, it's important about the internal teams. Most importantly, I would argue, it's is around your technical resolving groups, okay? Because you're going to put a lot of pressure on them. You're going to be asking a lot from them during major incidents in a really stressful situation. And because of the nature of most very technical people and the fact that what we see is typically they lean in the DISC methodology of psychometric profiling towards S and C, so S for steadiness, C for conscientiousness. And with those two personality types and things in between those, typically you see quite analytical people who are very conscientious in their work. Now, putting them in highly stressful, time-pressured situations where they may not have the full amount of time to go through their work as they would normally like is quite stressful for them. So in the emotional bank account, we want to think about every relationship we have with each individual person as its own bank account. And as with bank accounts, you can make deposits and you can make withdrawals. Now, really, really simple concept, but very, very useful to think about this. Deposits can be really, really simple. It might be manners, it might be saying please, thank you when you talk to people. Or it might be more, it might actually be showing an interest in them and wanting to talk about them or learning something about them. It could be really simple once you know them a bit. It might be asking how their kids are, how their family is. And I'll talk in a bit more detail about other things that you can do quite simply as major incident managers. But what I want to focus on for now is the withdrawals. And withdrawals can come in multiple forms, but for major incident management in our context, withdrawals are every time you engage with them for a major incident, you are asking things of them. So technically you are withdrawing from that bank account. Now, what happens when you only make withdrawals in a bank account? Okay, eventually you go into the red, and at a certain point you can no longer make withdrawals. It's not good. Okay. However, conversely, if you're fortunate enough to have a job at the moment, I know lots of people are out of work due to COVID-19, but if you're fortunate to have a job at the moment, there are deposits being made into your account. Okay. In the same way, with your technical resolving groups, that you are making withdrawals every time you are asking something of them, we need to be making deposits so that we don't go into the red and get to a point where we cannot withdraw anymore. Yeah, so there's a balance. Now, Dr. John Godman, he believed through his 40 years of research that it takes about 5 deposits in this metaphor in a relationship for one withdrawal. But what he was talking about is really negative withdrawals. So in our context, asking things of people isn't necessarily a really bad withdrawal, but it is a withdrawal. There does need to be some currency in there. A really bad or negative experience might be that you're disrespectful to someone, and that may be unintentional, but still that is a withdrawal and potentially quite a substantial one. It might be as simple as you don't say please, you don't say thank you ever, and that person feels disrespected by that. It might be that you call somebody out in an inappropriate forum, like on a major instant bridge call, where really you could have sidelined that conversation and had it in private or offline. So a whole host, and you're all very smart. I don't need to explain really negative withdrawals that can be pretty substantial. But I want to talk about how you build up these deposits. And first of all, as I said, really, really simple. Manners make a huge difference. Saying please, saying thank you. But most major instant managers, even very good ones, only think about this, even when they do think about it, if indeed at all, during major incidents. Okay, and I know that all of us are very busy, but actually I would suggest the most effective deposits are made outside of live major incidents. And the most effective deposits are those where you're saying thank you to someone outside of a major incident. You've taken time to have a 2-minute phone call and say, really appreciated your support. We couldn't have done this without you and the rest of the team. Really, really valuable. Thank you ever so much. That's really simple, but that shows somebody that you care. It shows respect. Another one, if you really want to take this further, is you have to be genuine about this, but ask their feedback. So you've said thank you. From your perspective as a technical resolving group member, what do you think I could do better as a major incident manager that would support you or make it easier for you to be as effective as possible? Where do you think I can improve? And actually listen to what they say and hopefully act upon that. And what you're doing is you're being, as long as you're being genuine, you're showing that you actually care and value that person's feedback. They are a valued member of the wider major incident team, and you care enough to take that on board. But first of all, you care enough just to ask, because very few people do that, and actually eliciting feedback. And I've talked about major incident management being one of the best places to learn leadership skills and soft skills, because you've got such a frequency in terms of being able to test out your leadership skills. But also, if you're not asking feedback, you're missing out on a really, really important feedback loop that allows you to evolve as not just a major incident manager, but as a leader very, very quickly. If you're doing this after the majority of your major incidents, after a period of a year, you should look like a very different major incident manager. And that's based on all the feedback you're asking for of the technical resolving groups, of your customers, of your leadership team, and anyone else you engage with. Could be vendors, third parties. But this is a really, really important and very easy and quite quick way to improve those relationships, and also to make sure that you always have deposits going into that emotional bank account with people. So when you think about that, if you have a particularly challenging relationship with somebody at the moment, whether it's technical resolving group, whether it's a member of your customers organisation, and there's a bit of a challenge there, I'd take one or two of these relationships, literally jot it down on paper and look at it and go, what positive actions can I do that are specific to that person, so context for them, that I think would be positive, and how frequently can I do this? Okay, really, really simple exercise, but just to get you thinking about it, and then try it and see what happens. Okay, and measure that, because I can guarantee, even if you've had a really challenging relationship with a technical resolving group member or a customer, the fact that you start engaging in dialogue with them and you are making the effort to say please, thank you, if it's technical resolving group member as well, actually caring a bit about what they do. So when you have a bit of capacity, asking them about what their normal day job looks like, what are they doing in their environment. If they're near enough, obviously outside of the lockdown, go and spend some time with them, go and spend half an hour with them if you have the capacity, and see what they're doing, observe, and just say, I just want to learn a little bit more about what you're doing, and so I have a bit better understanding and a better understanding, so ultimately I can support you more during major incidents. Same with your customers, if this is possible. If you've never spent time with your customers, never visited them, try and get the opportunity to have a coffee with them, and this goes a long way in starting that dialogue. And we talked a bit about this in the last episode, but I almost can't stress enough how revolutionary it can be when you start thinking about how many deposits am I putting in versus withdrawals, so requests I'm putting on people. Your behaviour starts to change, and that manifests in much deeper, more positive relationships. And as I said, for major incident managers, that can be one of the biggest things you can do to improve both your performance but the entire IT operations. And I talk a lot about major incident managers being leaders. Okay, you don't necessarily need to be a manager to be a leader, and we'll cover that in future editions. But being a leader sometimes means not waiting and asking for permissions, not having your boss or the leadership say to you, you need to go and build these relationships, you need to get better. Actually taking it upon yourself and being proactive and starting to build those. And if you're in a larger major incident team, actually being the catalyst for positive change. So you being the one that is talking about this, you being the one that is actually acting upon it, and then sharing it with the team and saying, well, I've been doing this, and this is working really well with Sally, and this is working really well with John, and Hardeep really likes when you talk about this. And so there's loads and loads and loads of things that you can talk about, but really what we need here is action, and you need to be the leader within your own team and kind of exemplifying those behaviours so that others within your major incident team are starting to look at how you do it. And so instead of just you, when you run a major incident, being really, really effective and it being slightly inconsistent from the perspective of the technical resolving groups and service managers or your customers or your leadership, you being able to bring your entire major incident team with you on that journey and go, I've been doing this, really, really powerful, and perhaps being that person that people look to. And that's really doable for all of you. What I will say is leadership's a really fun thing. There's loads of fantastic leadership theory, but the reality is that when you're dealing with people in any capacity, you're going to fail a lot. Because people are unpredictable, things are difficult, and if you haven't gone through a course or learned a bit about psychometric profiling, you might not have a firm grasp on how to approach different types of people and how to communicate with them, which can also be a bit of a challenge. So they may misunderstand what you're trying to say. Your intent is right, but they may misunderstand the message because it's not been communicated in their language or the way they perceive the world, and so there's more room for conflict. Even if you do understand that, I would say some of these things you're just going to get wrong. At certain times you're going to offend people without meaning to, or people are going to feel disrespected. As a major incident manager and this real extreme ownership, everything's our fault. And again, I talked about that in the last episode, but I can't really talk about that enough. So it's on us to fix that. Okay? The message that you give, it almost doesn't matter what the intent is. It matters how it's received and what happens as a result of that. So you're going to go away and try this, and sometimes it's not going to work. But I promise you, if you persist with this, you'll see some massive improvements. You'll also see some people respond far quicker than others, and that's okay. Just know that that will be the case. Not everyone's going to move or respond the same way or at the same pace of you going and putting this into practice. Some will require a bit more. Some people are far more open and far more trusting. Some people require a lot more effort and energy over a longer period. But us as major incident managers, the responsibility to lead those relationships into really positive places is completely on us and for us to do. So thank you very much. Really enjoyed doing this next show. We've had some really interesting questions asked on LinkedIn, and I'll address those in the next couple of shows. If you've got any of your own questions or things that you and your team might be struggling with as major incident managers, or perhaps you're in a leadership position, or you own a major incident function and there's something you're trying to improve, please do reach out on LinkedIn, ask some questions, and we'll pick that up in a show. So just to summarise, emotional bank account, a metaphor for the relationship we have with each person. Each person has an emotional bank account, and we need to be making constant deposits so that when we make withdrawals and we're asking things of them during major incidents, and we're asking them to push themselves really hard, there's plenty of currency in there, and we're not going to go into the red and we no longer have the ability to ask. Really simple concept, but really, really powerful. And just to be in that headspace, I promise you, acting on this, really taking time to build the relationships, ends up moving your entire IT operation at a much faster pace. Really, really important.